I have a lot of KBDFans boards, and even for the ones I don't own, I've strongly considered getting them. They offer competitive designs and build qualities at very good prices, and their timelines for group buys tend to be much faster due to their location in China. One of these boards is the KBD661. This is sort of a successor to the KBD66, but not directly so. When I bought this board, there was a round 2 group buy running concurrently for the KBD66, so I see it as more of two separate lines of products. I think this is fair since the design is drastically different from the more conservative one found on the 66. Whether this is true or not has not been confirmed, but there has been suspicions that the 661 was inspired by a cherry profile shift key, and it's very clear why people might think that. At first glance, the proportions look pretty much equivalent. I actually took some measurements and found that proportionally the board is longer than the two 2.2U shift keys found on it, but the point still stands. This is an elegant design that really breaks the mold. It's really out there, but I think it manages to stay elegant. When placed on a surface, the only visible part of the case is the top portion, which spans the entire height. The bezel at the sides are pretty minimal, which gives it a pretty unique look. The inclines aren't so extreme that the design becomes gaudy, but it gives the board a bit of that flair that's lacking in a lot of the more conservative designs in the market. One sort of strange thing is that both on their site and on the Massdrop group buy page, they're offering two color combinations that don't allow for same color matches. This is something KBDFans has been doing, and it upsets some people because they're forced into a certain color scheme, but it isn't a big issue in this particular keyboard since the bottom case is not at all visible when in use. As always, I can't speak for all units out there, but I think the quality of this board is very good. I think it might even best some of the other models by KBDFans. I tried really hard to find flaws in the finish, and the only thing I came up with are the faint machining marks on the sides of the case. I think this ends up being totally fine as it just looks like a stylized brushed finish. I didn't find any anode bending effects or chips that we saw in the Niu Mini. The mounting mechanism on the 661 is also pretty interesting. It's essentially a sandwich case. The plate mounts onto the bottom case by these pegs, and this bottom case mounts onto the top case by 6 screws on the back. This means that the whole assembly is held together by just 6 screws. Because the pegs are in the perimeter of the plate, it may be assumed that there may be some amount of flex, but the assembly feels pretty rigid to me. And I just want to note here that the overall fit between the bottom and the top cases is basically perfect. The tolerances are very good, which is critical for this kind of design because looseness can cause rattle between the pieces. The plate supports a relatively limited number of layouts. Aside from the most standard Leopold 660 layout, it supports a split left shift, split backspace, split enter, split right shift, and a couple different configurations for the modifiers to the right of the spacebar. It doesn't support anything like ISO or off-center stems or different length spacebars. This is kind of weird because the PCB does support them. The layout limitations is actually not a large issue for me because I largely stick to ANSI, maybe with the exception of split backspace, but your mileage may vary. Another thing to note is that unlike a lot of other enthusiast plates, it doesn't support switch top opening. The result of this is that every switch fits incredibly tightly. The Kailh Pro purples I have in mind actually shaved off a bit of its housing when being installed. I'm completely fine with this decision since switch top opening on a complete board isn't something I do often, and it allows better stability and alignment for the switches. The PCB on the KBD661 is almost identical to the one in the 66 with one important distinction. It doesn't have the screw mounting points. Otherwise, they're identical. This means that a KBD66 PCB can be used in a KBD661, but not vice versa. When programming the 661, you just follow the instructions for the 66 on the GMK repository. Overall, I think the KBD661 has excellent build quality. When fully assembled with cherry profile keycaps, it weighs over 3 pounds. The heft combined with the angle design means that it's kind of hard to pick up, but this isn't something I do very often, so it's alright. But when I do need to pick it up, I just kind of slide it off the desk a little bit and get a hold on an edge. This particular KBD661 is built with Kailh Pro purples with craft foam installed between the PCB and the plate, as well as under the PCB. Let's have a listen. The board feels very nice, the sound is dampened to some level, and the bottom out feels nice and solid. The angle is also fairly comfortable. It can look like it sits higher off the resting surface than other boards, but I think it's just a perception thing related to the angle design. It actually seems to be about the same height as my KBD66, if not lower. Overall, this is a board with a layout that I really like. It's got a super interesting design that might be polarizing, but I really like it. Along with that comes very high quality machine parts that are rare at this price point. I think it's really going to come down to whether you like the way it looks. If you do, you should definitely jump on it because it's a great value. If you don't, there are plenty of 660 layout options available, one of which is offered by KBDFans themselves, but isn't it fun to venture out of the familiar designs sometimes? Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, like it, and subscribe for more. I've accumulated quite a few boards with this layout, so stay tuned if you're interested.